Okay, and the magic machine tells me that I'm live, so that I will trust in the magic machine that I'm live. To share that with my analyst, I don't know how to deconstruct that. Um, did an informal video from my abode on the topic of Troika for solo play. Interesting enough, I though I am coming from the more settled and established, we say hello to Genocide first in the live chat. Welcome, gold medal onto thee. Um, Settled establishment of the office for this broadcast. I have not put links to other videos in the description box below. Tippy-Tiotig, the perfect is the enemy of the good. We compromised those bells and whistles in order to get the primary message across. For fear of losing steam and not having any video be made, I thought it better to skip those preliminary steps and just get to the meat and potatoes of delivering the goods. And we say hello to Rugged Source, silver medal onto thee for live chat participation. Hi. Geek gamers who, if the blurb is to be believed, where does it says this? There was some blurb here. There was some language here that was like a kind of, I don't hold it against her. There was some verbose language, some hyperbolic, like the number one. No, and I've said it too. She's the queen. She's the queen. Geek Gamers is the host of Geek Gamers, YouTube's premier solo RPG channel. I think that's fair enough to say, at least for the moment. Hey, you know what I mean? And like the Rolling Stones will always be number one. I don't even think that. I don't even like the Rolling Stones that much. I'm making all sorts of statements. Geek Gamers talked about Troika, the lovely system. She held up the Numinous edition. I pointed out in my follow up to her coverage, and I have her solo Game Master's Guide. I'm working my way through it. The new Bible of solo RPG play, no doubt. I'll be bringing a comprehensive review. I'll have to. I plan on being contrarian. Sowing the seeds of discord now amongst people who don't give a damn. Anyway, contrarian. How to be contrarian. Listen. Geek Gamers made a video about Troika for solo play. Funny enough, I found another video today by another YouTube content creator that I like, called, I think he's called Stone Tabletop or Stone Table Axe Game. Let me find this. I'm not going to do this to you guys. The heck. Christ. I don't care. Well, as I'm looking for the name, I'll tell you the long story short. This, funny enough, he posted this video about 8 months ago, and what the funny thing being is that his takeaway was, having tried Troika for solo play, his analysis was, oh man, don't do it. No, I no, he does some different things with it, but his takeaway was it was a bother, that it didn't lend itself to solo play. He came to a different conclusion. Though obviously follow-up vids on his channel would indicate that he still likes the system, and I don't Troika's great system. I wouldn't begrudge him that. And has continued with it, though maybe not for solo play. But it's interesting. Oh Christ. Stone Axe Tabletop Gaming. Stone Axe Tabletop Gaming is the gentleman's channel name. He did a video about it where he basically said Troika for solo play. Oh man, I tried it and it wasn't the greatest shakes. But look, that wasn't what Geek Gamers thought. Geek Gamers thought that Troika was great for solo play. And when I saw Geek Gamer's video for Troika for solo play, I said, let me jump on and continue the conversation by pointing out two things that she neglected to point out, or I don't think neglected to point out, failed to point out. It's an abject failure on her part. These were things that were not in her video, perchance by chance. So I covered them, which were just simply, and these are facts that, are out and are known, that the rules for Troika, oddly enough, being recommended for solo play, have their origins in a solo play system. Fighting Fantasy. The rules for Troika are basically lifted almost wholesale, as near as I can tell. And I've done more investigation. My initial video basically was, hey, I know, and I've looked at it in the past. I can't tell you A, B it, but I said, look, I basically think you could probably run Troika characters in these Fighting Fantasy books, because I looked at it before, and I think these systems are pretty near identical, or very close to identical. Why leave it to someone else? So, and then I also pointed out the fact that while she had the Numinous edition and was recommended Troika, the Troika model, one of the great things about Troika is that it has a wonderful, amazing amount of supplementary material available from third-party, independent third parties, because it has a very open license. And one of the things I talked about was the fact that Troika, like Morkborg, seems to be flourishing with this open license model and its encouragement of this kind of Etsy community, folk art, cooperative group share model of growth through group affiliation. And I noted that on the 20-year nostalgia loop that I'm very interested in, and note as a practicing chrono magician. And I talk about all the time on my main channel, which is the only channel that I don't have a link for in my description box below. C.W.Chanter, CW Chanter, in case you're curious. It's the least interesting of all my channels, in case you're curious. This is the most interesting of all my channels, in case you're curious. At the moment, as far as I'm concerned. Anyway, but speaking about that open license model, the SRD, the standard rules derivation, the standard resource documentation, I guess, I don't know, the Milsonian Arts Council, let me think if I just get the link. Troika SRD. Google search for Troika SRD just gets you to it. So if you do system reference document, here you go. Share screen. Don't mind if I do, because then we could just look at it. Boom. Yes, thank you. Look at that. Talk about beauty. This is what I'm talking about. Here's the nostalgia loop right for you. What am I talking about? The 20 nostalgia loop here. Slight derivation. Slight reference derivation document. It was in 2000 that Wizards of the Coast put out that OGL gaming license and the SRD for Dungeons and Dragons 3rd edition that allowed Osric, that allowed the creation of basic fantasy and all of the OSR and all of the retro clones and all of the D20 systems, allowed for Big Eyes, Small Mouth, Anime, RPG, allowed for all of those flourishing of all those D20 systems from 2000 to 2000 and whatever. And all of the growth that happened during that time, which mirrors almost exactly what was happening with, or should have been, or could have been happening with the recording industry, with Napster and peer-to-peer networks, with digital file sharing. Basically, you saw Wizards of the Coast as the number one RPG content maker, understanding what was happening and how the ecosystem, the economic ecosystem was working with third-party developers. I mean, it was a different model, obviously, that they were working in, but they saw how open sourced information, was going to work, and they made a more successful play at it than obviously I think the Recording Industry of America, whatever it's called, RIAA, did, with those endless lawsuits and the pillaring of Lars Ulrich and all that stuff. Anyway, that's a total whole other thing. But anyway, here we are, 2022, 20 years on. What do I think with the 20-year nostalgia loop? Everything that's of importance that's going on in any given time is almost perfectly a reiteration of what was happening 20, 25, 30 years basically before. And so what's going on in RPGs today? Exactly what was going on 20 years ago. An open gaming license revolution. All that anybody's really talking about, really what people are talking about, is Mork, Borg, and Cyborg, which is the entire thing. Troika were a little bit before. They were 2 years, about before Mork Borg, with the open gaming license and with the open license and the, hey guys, everybody get involved, and the license is way open. Here it is. Here's the terms. Anyone may publish free or commercial material based on and or declaring compatibility with Troika without express written permission from the publisher, the Melsonian Arts Council, as long as they adhere to the following terms. If your product declares compatibility with Troika, you must state the following in your legal text and on any websites from which a commercial product is sold. Blank, product name is an independent production by blank, publisher name, and is not affiliated with the Melsonian Arts Council. The Melsonian Arts Council takes no responsibility for any legal claims against your product. The mechanics and concepts of Troika may be reused freely. The text of Troika may not be used verbatim. All artists maintain copyright of their work. That's so important. But check this out. If I'm lying, I'm fucking dying. Look at the open license terms, copyright terms, that everybody is literally blowing the dudes from that Stockholm cartel over. It's almost word for word this fucking thing. If I'm lying up, it's my big black ass. Sacred Parasites, compatible with Morkborg. Because we'll reverse engineer it, because we'll see them use the license, and they'll say that it's published under the Morkborg third-party license. Well, do they get? But do they? I think you have to. Don't you have to repeat the license? Don't you have to tell us what the license is? I thought you had to do the license. Oh, they may be fucking up. I thought you had to do the thing. Anyway, I'm gonna go get those guys in trouble. Anyway, look at the headlines. It's almost the same. Truth Seekers. Yeah. Well, wake up. Welcome, Truth Seekers. Thank you for the view. Listen. Sleep, sweet prince. Look, if you came here because you need a nap and I can give you a nap, just don't wake up. We're all free. You know what I mean? Honey, we're good. Listen, so here's the point, the SRD. The reference document is an adaptation of the freely available Troika SRD, presented here for the first time in glorious HTML. The point is you can get this, you can get the Troika game for free. I have it here printed out. You don't get the art. You don't get the art. You don't get the art, and I don't think you get all of the backgrounds. I don't think you get all of the 66 backgrounds, but you get, besides that, you get the game. You get the entire game. And the questions that we left unanswered last time, which was basically this. I said, look, Troika is a great system, and I held up. I said, look, I said, here are some of the things that I have for it. I pointed out that you can get the SRD for free, either as an online resource or as a PDF that you can download and print out for yourself. We also say hello to Juicy J. I love you, Truth Seekers, baby. I love you, baby. Listen, Truth Seekers, listen, you come in. I assume you're coming in as a straight man. I assume you're coming in setting up a joke, baby. But we pointed out the fact that we knew that it had its origins in this earlier game system called Fighting Fantasy. So we knew that Geek Gamers had pointed out Troika and recommended it for solo play. But she hadn't mentioned the fact that it had its origins in Fighting Fantasy, which was originally a solo play system. Now, having said that, Troika is actually based on kind of advanced Fighting Fantasy, which was kind of a version of the Fighting Fantasy system that you saw in the original game books, like Deathtrap Dungeon that we're talking about today, but kind of a version of the fighting system that was then extrapolated out into a more robust role-playing game system. So I'm not looking at that system itself, that extra iteration of it. But knowing that it originally came from this first Fighting Fantasy game book system, I said, look, she recommended for solo play. I said, but I wonder, I said, having the SRD, I said, I wonder if you could play these Troika characters in these Fighting Fantasy books. I bet you could. And I left my video there. Why leave it to somebody else? So look, here was the deal, and here was the problem. I have basically a massive playthrough outstanding, you know what I mean, and uncompleted. So do we move on to another project? In addition to that, I have kind of specialized in the covering of the Micro Chatbook RPG system, and Noah Patterson from Micro Chatbook RPG has, in response to, over the last literally 2 weeks, in response to kind of bitchy statements by me on Instagram, given us information about the evolution of the system for 2.0, and then also independently of me, then just made independent news updates regarding the evolution, or just statements regarding. There's been information regarding the new RPG system from Noah Patterson that he's calling micro RPG 2.0, right? So as a guy that's kind of specialized in micro RPG, I'm supposed to cover that too, right? Even though I've openly asked the question here, are people actually interested in that? And the response has been, yeah, we are. But the response is like, there's like 4 or 5 people out there in the world. But look, this is like it's beyond niche. What are we gonna do? And it's a small growing channel. What are we gonna do? Just gotta take it as it comes. Like, and relax. You know what I mean? And it's a game, and we're just, chill, right? So anyway, I gotta go where my heart goes, and I gotta go where, my instinct leads me. My instinct leads me to say, we're gonna finish those other playthroughs if we finish them. And if we don't, I don't think the world's going to end. We're obviously going to play Morkborg again at some point. But I had Deathtrap Dungeon from Fighting Fantasy. And I had the Troika SRD. And I had, in addition to that, I had the quick start rules for Advanced Fighting Fantasy. And I had, looked at other, online abstracts from, Dungeoneer, the, other versions of the Advanced Fighting Fantasy game, earlier iterations of it. So what the fuck? I said, let's see if let's take a look at the rules ourselves, and let's see if we can do it, if we can play a Troika character. Oh, and also here's another game. This is another game called Warlock, and the only reason I brought this game out here was because this is another game that, inspired by the early days of British tabletop gaming, also takes a lot of influence from the Fighting Fantasy system with its use of skills. So I just thought, because I had it, that I would bring it out, as pointing out that there seems to be a renaissance of this Fighting Fantasy system, which makes sense because, look, then it becomes the 40-year nostalgia loop. But then again, we are now in the time of endless nostalgia loops, where, because the nostalgia loop becomes rewound and rewound and rewound over and over again, right? If 2002 is just a rewind to 1982, then 2022, if it's a rewind to 2002, just becomes a rewind to 1982 again. So then it's just a rewind of a rewind. Then you get to things like Baudelaire and Walter Benjamin, and the concept of a Xerox and the loss of definition. And then you get things like Stranger Things, where people are remembering the 80s, but they're not nostalgic for the 80s. They're not seeing an iteration. They're not getting nostalgic for the 80s by rewatching Fast Times at Ridgemont High. They're not even an 11 or a 12-year-old kid from today's generation who's, getting a hit of the 80s from, Back to the Future, from an instance of the 80s. They're getting an appropriated amalgam that is being presented to them, and they're being told, this was the 80s. This was what the 80s were. But, anyone that was like Jonaside, me, Truth Seekers, anyone that's of a certain age will tell you, I'll look at Stranger Things and I'll tell you, I understand what they're doing here, but this was not this. There was no this year, right? Whenever you look at, and in role-playing games, in the role-playing game sphere, because it's nerd culture sphere, this is absolutely pertinent to talk about, because one of the games that people are talking about now is a game called Demigorgons and Demons and Demigorgons, I think it's called, or something. And it's an OSR game. It's a retro clone game. And I think it's made by this guy from Bloat Games. I'm blanking on his first name. Last name obviously is Bloat. It's comical name, but good game designer of one of his other games. The zombie hack for the black hack, is a good game. Um, and but it's basically Stranger Things, the role playing game, and a lot of people are very interested in it. It's getting a lot of, you see it gets a lot of coverage in the YouTube space, and but this period of time, never was. I mean, if you actually were, 1982 actually was. 1982 was an actual year where a specific set of movies actually came out and a specific set of events actually occurred. Same likewise for 1984, 86, 89. These specific years actually occurred and actual events happened. And if you go back and you see these like appropriations of the time or recreations or reimaginings of the time, they put all these instances of things that are 80s like, and they put them all together. So you have the big hair of the White Snake like fangirl next to the 1982 Ronald Reagan yuppie voting yuppie girl with her skirt and her sneakers. And that's a dated reference. No one is even going to mention yuppie girl, right? Yuppie girl doesn't translate anymore because yuppie girl isn't is an image, but because her images are on her feet, you can't. And she changes her shoes, right? That was the whole thing with yuppie girl. She changes her sneakers into, remember yuppie girl? She changes, working girl, she changes her sneakers. She changes her sneakers into her fancy shoes at work. People don't even remember this. Or the leg warmers and shit. The leg warmers were from like the early 80s. You wouldn't be caught, the girls wouldn't be caught fucking dead. They wouldn't be caught dead with those leg warmers in 87 or 88. If you girl had those leg warmers on in 87 or 88, all the girls in my town would have known that she just came off the bus from like fucking East Germany, right? Because East Germany was still a fucking thing. When I was in middle school playing role-playing games, playing Dungeons and Dragons, Russia, like the Soviet Union, was still a fucking place. If a girl showed up with leg warmers in 88, you knew she was fucking, a spy and shit. They made that fucking movie with John Travolta and that other guy where they were the spies in the town for Russian spies. That happened in a specific year, in a specific time, in a specific place, right? And I'm way off the fucking beaten path here. Can you play Troika characters in Deathtrap Dungeon? Yeah, you fucking can, because it's basically this. So anyway, you want to do something wrong, do it yourself. If you're CW Chanter, that is. You start a video and you say you're going to talk about Troika and RPGs and playing them in Deathtrap Dungeon, and then you start talking about the communists and John Travolta. That happened. I blame Truth Seekers. He's napping. Genocide. Vark Verkinis has his own RPG games. Yes, Murtharga or whatever it is. People know about it. Its reputation is that it's trash. Like, I think I've taken a look at it. It's like its reputation is that it's trash. Meanwhile, you know what I mean? Like, say what you want about the harshness of the American jurisprudence system. When I see Varg Verkanis walking around all the time at that time when he was on YouTube, like having the time of his life in the heyday of right-wing YouTube, like Fantasyland, man, I was saying to myself, I understand that the American jurisprudence system is so fucked up, but at the same time, damn it. You know what I mean? That guy was just fucking walking around. He was just fucking walking around having kids and shit on his fucking farm. You know what I mean? Like, I know he killed that guy young and shit, but still, like, damn. You know what I mean? That's a forgiving system where the guy could just, and he escaped at one point, right? The guy broke out. Just, you know what I mean? Living your life. I get paid your debt to society. It is what it is. It is what it is. It is what it is. Anyway, then we're going way off the field. And I gotta be careful. Vikings. He shot the guy. You know what I mean? Vikings. He shot the guy. He shot the guy right in his drawers, right? And like in the laundry list of crimes included listening to Kraftwerk, right? Never forget that the laundry list of crimes included, you know what I mean? Thou art soft, thou art cult enough, thou listen to Kraftwerk. You know, and then those guys from Morkborg, they dedicate the Morkborg book to that guy, you know, Per Ellison or whatever, like I don't know, whatever the guy's name was, the guy Dead from the original lead singer of Mayhem. That's nice. The original lead singer of Mayhem was a confused kid, right? You know what I mean? Who made like an outrageous form of folk noise music. You know what I mean? And you dedicate your harsh RPG to him, and I'd say to you, man, I was there. I don't know how old these kids are, but I have a feeling that these kids are involved. I have a feeling that I'm using the term kids in regards to these kids appropriately, that these kids are a lot younger than me, and these kids are involved in a fair degree of fan worship. Listen, folks, just because someone died earlier in time to you chronologically, listen to their, you know, honestly, like, you know, like Robert, you know, Johnson, like the blues. Like the blues is a hell of a fucking thing. And Robert Johnson could sing, and like the recordings we have of the guy, the music, the soul, and the voice. And wow, you know what I mean? He's a young guy and he died young, and all these people, like, there's no fucking reason to think these guys like, or these guys or gals like had like any fucking like real clue to shit. You know, like you listen to like a lot of recordings of people like Janis Joplin or like, you know, whatever, all these people, like, you know, sometimes they say things and like, yeah, you know, you listen to a lot of recordings. You have to remember, like, the recordings that we hear these people, especially the recordings that we hear a lot of the times that they get resurfaced every year on like the 35th anniversary of their death, like like oftentimes it's the profound things that they said. You know what I mean? That we're going to get, that we're going to hear all the time, that they're going to always, you know, bring back and forth. And, you know, just remember that, like, just like Chinese fortune cookies, everybody's going to get lucky every once in a while. Do you know what I mean? Like every stoner, drunk, like lame ass, weirdo loser in high school, like that you ever knew, like every once in a while gets lucky and is going to be like, you know what? The stars, the sun, the moon, they're going to be here tomorrow. And you're probably going to be here tomorrow too. And your problems are probably going to be here tomorrow too. So you can probably just relax and just go with it. You know, everyone's going to get, you know, hey man, all I can tell you is on the road of life, there's going to be ups and there's going to be downs and there's going to be side turns and hustles. But you know what? You just got to go for it. You know what I mean? Everyone's going to have like wins. But at the same time, I got to tell you, if you listen to long term, I got to tell you, I've heard on tape gals like Janis Joplin, guys like John Lennon, so say like whack ass shit. Like a lot of these people, don't fucking dedicate anyone to anybody. Don't worry about like fucking, and especially guys like the dude from the original lead singer of Mayhem. No offense. When you dedicate your role-playing game to the lead singer of Mayhem, you know what you're telling the world? You're telling the world, hey guys, check us out. You remember the lead singer of Mayhem who committed suicide, and then remember, and his like the band members were so hardcore. One of them, before they called the police, like went and like he took a piece of the brain, took it, made a necklace out of it, and the other guy was like took photos. Yeah, we're dedicating our RPG to him because we know who he is. You're telling us that you know who he is. And you know what? You're telling us, when if you're not fucking 45. If you are not 40, whatever years old or older, you are basically telling the world, guess what, guys? At some point in my youth, I went to Virgin Records, HMV, Tower Records, some other record store, music store, online mail order place, and or my mom or dad on Amazon, or I went on to fucking Encyclopedia Metallium as a fucking child and read the fucking history of music and studied and now know the history. And guess what? We're playing tribute. We know to say that this guy was good. Do you actually like his music? Why? Why are you into Mayhem? Is fucking Mayhem like really like why? What are you're into? For real, for real? Like of all the artists in the world who've ever existed, who've ever fucking died, who've ever been like terminated by a fucking like one-on-one collision by a fucking automobile, the dude from from Mayhem was the guy? You know what I think? I think you were dying to tell the world that you were into black metal because you are on the 20-year nostalgia loop. Guess what? 25 years ago, it's 2022. 25 years ago was 1997. Do the fucking math. The resurgence of Norwegian black metal that was 92, 93 when it started. It didn't come out into the world until 95, 96. That's when, Project, fucking AP Alternative Press started covering all that shit and it started to be all over the place. If I'm lying, I'm fucking dying. You tune over here. This is playing Troika RPG and Deathtrap Dungeon. If you don't know that me screaming this way about fucking the fucking guys from Workborg dedicating their fucking bullshit RPG to fucking this is Deathtrap Dungeon. Bait switch, Workborg. So the other fact of the matter is this is par for the course. We're 37 minutes in, so this would constitute legitimately, honestly, basically par for the course, the intro section of the video. So here's as good a time as any to say, if you want to know what my experience was. So I said, look, can you play Troika characters in Deathtrap Dungeon? Yes, you can. Here's the situation. Okay, so here's the situation. Troika. So I left the question open. I'm trying to, okay. So this technically would be part 2 of my follow-up to Geek Gamer's coverage of Troika, recommending Troika for solo play. So actually getting to the nuts and bolts of it, having posed the question, I said to myself the next day, well, let me actually look at the question myself. And I did. I looked at Deathtrap Dungeon and I looked at the SRD. I looked at the rule. I'm not going to keep on calling it the SRD. I'm just going to keep on calling it. I'm just going to call it the rules for Troika. And just got into it to see what the rules and the differences were so that we could understand what the compromises would actually be and what would have to be done to get these two things to work. So the first thing we need to know is I approached it just from the perspective of looking at Deathtrap Dungeon. Deathtrap Dungeon is a very simple game book. It is imagining one basic warrior class type hero trying to survive a dungeon crawl gauntlet for fame. It has no magic system. It has no system for the resolution of ranged combat. It provides you with 10 provisions or meals and a warning to use them sparingly and rules for how they will refresh your health. And it allows you a choice of one of 3 potions to take with you on your journey, and then that's it. Then we're left with the fact that it resolves how it resolves its combat and its stats and how it generates its characters. And I can tell you that beginning there, we see the differences, we see the similarities. It has the same stats and it resolves combat the same way. At least Advanced Fighting Fantasy and Troika does, in the sense that, but this they resolve combat the same way. They don't resolve damage the same way. We'll get that way, but let's do one step at a time. Character creation. There are, in Troika and in Fighting Fantasy, there are but 3 stats: skill, stamina, and luck. Skill in Fighting Fantasy is generated by rolling and in both systems you only use 6-sided dice. And I can tell you that the wonderful thing about Deathtrap Dungeon is that it actually has a system where it has dice generated at the bottom of the page. Like, it has 2 dice on the bottom of certain pages. So you're actually supposed to be able to flip through the pages. So if you don't have dice on you, you could just flip through the book. Bearing in mind, don't lose your place where you are in the book. No. But other than that, you can flip through the book and use that as an artificial way to generate, dice combinations if you're sans die, as it were. You have skill, stamina, and luck. In Fighting Fantasy, you generate your skill by rolling 1 die, a 6-sided die, and adding 6. The difference in Troika is they basically half that, where it's a 1d3 that would be a 6-sided die, the result of a 6-sided die halved and rounded up, plus 3. And I think the reason that is because in Troika they also have advanced skills, which include fighting skills and combat skills that I think will eventually add to the result of these die rolls, these skill die rolls, that I think are supplementing that. When I actually did a playthrough of Deathtrap Dungeon, I just generated the skills as per Fighting Fantasy instead of as per Troika, figuring that if I went into Deathtrap Dungeon with half the skills of the enemies are used to, I'm going to get creamed. This is going to be a fucking face-off. So just know that the terms of Troika call for a generating of skills about literally half of what Fighting Fantasy calls for. So if you're not generating, or if you don't get a background that is a fighting type background, you're definitely going to want to probably go back and, multiply your skill times 2, or else I think you're going to be, in a lot of trouble. Both systems generate the remaining 2 stats, stamina, and luck the exact same way. And I can tell you, based on my readings of the introductory rules to Deathtrap Dungeon, as well as what I consider to be a fairly robust reading of the rules of Troika, that both Troika and Fighting Fantasy, even at this early stage of Fighting Fantasy, treat basically stamina and luck the same way. Stamina essentially is your health points, and luck is a stat that is utilized to basically influence previous die rolls. Luck can be spent to either re-roll certain things that have occurred, or to influence either damage certain ways or another way. Looking through these rules, obviously, as you're contemplating a playthrough, what you want to do in any playthrough when you're trying to mix systems is you're going to want to be consistent. So generally, what I kind of do is I'm not really banged up when I encounter something for the first time. Like when I encountered something for the first time on a playthrough, I'm not worried about it if I'm encountering it for the first time, because you just do it. Figure, okay, we're encountering this issue for the first time. We haven't encountered this type of enemy, this type of rule set, this type of encounter, whether it be poison or acid or some sort of other trap or issue or instance or time differential or whatever. We haven't encountered X before. Well, now we're encountering it. So how are we going to deal with it? Okay, we're going to deal with this sort of situation like this. Okay, well, now that's our rule. So from now on, we want to be consistent and apply that rule consistently. When we encounter poisonous snakes, we do this. When we use the provisions, we're going to roll for the number of health points or stamina points it regenerates as per the rules of Troika, not as per the automatic full health regen as per Fighting Fantasy. And that's just a hypothetical. I'm just trying to give you an example. Okay. So basically what I tried to do was basically look at the character creation rules of Troika and then utilize them, generate a character through Troika, and then put them in Deathtrap Dungeon. And that's simply what I did. And the first character I generated was this 33 background, which was a lens quinet, whatever that is. It's some sort of kind of like Baroque kind of fighting guardsman with a of course, it can't just be a pistol. It has to be a pistolet. Nothing. Everything has to be this grand kind of Renaissanceian kind of thing, and that's a lot of the criticisms that are raised about Troika, is this, weird for the sake of weird. You know what I mean? And oftentimes I'm looking at things and having to look up words and being like, even for a guy like me, I'm like, okay, what do they mean by this? And does that mean the character is deformed? What does that mean? Are they just trying to say that he's unusual? What are they trying to say? Are they referring to his appearance or his demeanor there? What is the fuck is this mean? And so whatever it is, Lance Quinet, you were a mercenary retained in the exclusive service of the Phoenix Throne, wherever that may be, handsomely paid and sent to a distant spheres on golden ships to spread the ineffable glory of your lords at the tip of your flaming sword. Whoa, so much there. Great sword, brightly colored clothing with lots of tassels and bells, impossible to sneak. Though frivolous looking, it is in fact built with the autarchs. I guess those are the kind of the tinkerers of this world of Troika. A divine alchemy and considered modest armor. So there's armor in Troika. There's no armor in Fighting Fantasy. while weighing the same as normal clothing. It takes no slots in your inventory. So there's inventory rules in Troika, and there's a robust and very interesting inventory dynamic system that I'm not going into. There's also very interesting um, initiative system that people are very into for Troika that I'm not going to go into in this video because it's not pertinent to us as we discuss playing a Deathtrap dungeon solo. So the first things that come to mind is that if you play a Troika character in Deathtrap Dungeon, your character is going to encounter enemies that are not set up for Troika. They're not Troika enemies. They're fighting fantasy enemies. So, for example, I encountered, my guy ended up dying after only one encounter, and he didn't end up dying after the encounter with the enemy. He ended up beating the enemy quite handsomely. He ended up encountering a rock grub with a skill of 7 and a stamina of 3. You see, well, they ended up with a stamina of 3. I think they started off with a stamina of 11. You see, so fighting fantasy, especially in this early iteration, the enemies will only have 2 stats, a skill stat and a stamina stat, whereas, a Troika enemy would have much more robust stats, including possibly armor to match the armor that your character might have. So you'll have a couple of choices. Also, damage is resolved differently in Deathtrap Dungeon than it is resolved in Troika or in advanced fighting fantasy. In Troika or in advanced fighting fantasies, there are tables. Combat is resolved essentially the same way. Both parties roll 2d6, add their skill plus their advanced skill. For an enemy in fighting fantasy, there is no advanced skill. There's just going to be a skill. Then whoever wins that dice shootout, whoever has the higher score, wins that combat round. Whoever wins that combat round would then roll for damage. In the case of fighting fantasy, whoever won that round of damage would automatically only lose 2 stamina points. If you scored higher than the enemy, you won, the enemy would lose 2 points. If the enemy scored higher than you lost, you would lose 2 points. If it was an even Stevens, if it was a draw, it was a draw. Nobody hit. Okay. In Troika, there's great hits if you hit like double whammies, and there's also fumbles. We're not going to worry about that right now. What we need to worry about is the fact that there's a discrepancy between the resolution of damage in Troika and the resolution in fighting fantasy. So I had a choice. You have an automatic choice. How are we going to resolve these enemy counters? So can you play Troika in fighting fantasy games? Absolutely you can. But your first choices, or one of your first choices, is going to be, how are you going to handle these enemy encounters? And how are you going to resolve the damage? You're going to want to have a consistent system. So you're either going to want to pick a lane. The easiest thing you could do would be to make sure that you're using a character whose skills and whose fighting style basically either sticks to melee, and you don't have to worry about spells or anything, or shooting or whatever, and you don't have to worry about anything, and that'll simplify things and take out one level of complexity of the issue. So if you're just dealing with melee issues, then it's just about your first thing would be, do you want to roll on these tables, these Troika tables, or do you want to just resolve the combat damage on these 2 hits for fighting fantasy? If you do it that way, the thing is that the things could go on, combat can go on for a little bit longer. Me being used to the micro chapbook RPG system, call it what you want, one of the cool things about it was the combat, one die roll if you hit, you hit. And if you missed, right, that was the other guy hitting you. So one roll was both actions. Here, you got to roll 2 sets of die to get one resolution of one combat round. So it's a little bit more work, but hey, it's what you're used to. So then it's going to be a question of just what you're going to want to do. The other question is this: is that if you're comfortable with it and you have the SRD, if you have the printed out tables in front of you, is the beasts in Troika are kind of, they're graded. There's a small beast, modest beast, large beast, and gigantic beast table. So what you could do also is you could simply, like for the rock grub, you could assign it one of these slots. So for example, you could just assign it the role of small beast. And so when you're resolving this combat encounter, if it were to win the combat round, when you rolled for damage, instead of just doing the 2 hits, the 2 stamina points as per Fighting Fantasy, you could say, if you were calling it a modest beast, do I have a 6-sided die around here somewhere? I got it. Come on. Yeah, no, I do. So if we call it it's a rock grub, we'll call it a modest beast. I rolled a 4. That would be 8 points of damage. Oh, Nike. I have 8 points of damage, and my guy originally had, his stamina was originally 18. Oh, that's a spicy meatball. Now, I did have moderate armor, so that would take, he did a 4. Actually, that would take him down to 2, so he'd only do 6 points of damage on me. See? But that's using, see? So that's me playing Troika in Fighting Fantasy. But that's me playing, that's me doing an executive decision and saying the rock rub is rock rub, drop the rock. Who gets it? We will give a silver gold medal. We will give 10 Varkanis heads on a platter to the person that gets this reference. To the first person that gets this reference, either in the live chat or in the comment section below. Okay, here it comes. Drop the rock. One more time. Drop the rock. Okay. Anyhow, you'd have to feel comfortable making the call as to whether these various things you encounter are small beasts, modest beasts, large beasts, or gigantic beasts for the purposes of Troika. Now that's more of a GM decision, but then again, if you're soloing it up, that's what you're trying to do. And if you know what I mean? And look, this is stuff you can do for free. So look, I mean, if you want to follow Geek Gamer's example and do Troika, I could set you up. You could be Troikaing it up solo for like nominal expenses in no time at all, because you can get the SRD for free. And you know what? The other thing is this: is that in the quick start rules for Advanced Fighting Fantasy, they have a whole scenario. You could play the Troika characters through that easy, no problem. Do that solo. So yes, you can play the Deathtrap dungeon. You can play these guys through Fighting Fantasy solo. You can. I guess the next step is I have ordered pretty much for nostalgia value. I found an inexpensive. I'm hoping it's a good copy, like what looks to be a pretty good vintage copy of the old school RPG version, like the Fighting Fantasy game. That I would want to be able to AB them, so that we'll be able to really get into this. But as far as the spell lists and things, because like you can do this, I think this is doable. My guy died, but he died straight up Deathtrap dungeon style, but it still provided this really cool solo role-playing game experience, which is, I guess, what I think it's all about. Number one, just having a guy from Troika go to the Deathtrap dungeon created a nexus of connection between the imaginary multiverse of Troika, lame as it may be, in certain pedantic ex-husbands' opinions. Ex-husbands, all right, hang together. Rare breed, there's not many of us. Ex-husbands, awesome. I have never noticed so many ring fingers as I have in the land of the document cam. Despite its name, Fang was an ordinary small town in the northern province of Chiang Mai. Despite its name. Situated on the banks of the River Cock. You ever been to the River Cock? It's near the province of Chiang Mai. I see what they did there. Hey! Fangcock. Trial of Champions. Fangxia Victor. May 1st of each year, 10,000 gold pieces. Champion. Listen, Suckumvitz. You can't make this shit up. The guy who runs the show, his name is Suckumvit. And the freedom of Chiang Mai is involved somehow. I don't know. But listen, if you want to attempt the walk, but just sending the guy from Troika to the walk indicates that the walk takes place in the realm of Troika or in some sort of contemporary space of Troika. There are theories online that all of television takes place in the same universe. So that was the first instance of kind of role play, this kind of imaginary moment where these worlds join via my head. One world created a couple of years ago in the 2000s, but drawing from the 80s, from this world of the 80s, and then being reintegrated in my nostalgia-fueled head, only to be reintegrated in a vast abortion and orgy of nostalgic ne'er-do-well gone south. Love it. Anywho, the next thing that I noticed was we always see in these movies with these contest of champions, from Terry Crews in Balls of Fury to Chuck Norris in Game of Death, we are presented oftentimes with characters, and we are told in their demeanor, in their name, in their accoutrement, in their clothing, in their status, in their titling, in their lineup, that they have a story, that they come from somewhere, that they are a champion, that they are great at what they do, that though what they do is not that pretty, that they are of the best, that they are cream of the crop. And yet we'll see them in these movies, in these tales, and these TV shows, sometimes get aced out, like in the opening scene, right? Like you have these grand contests of champions, and in these grand contests of champions, someone gets taken out in round one, right? There's always a Glass Joe in the Game of Death, right? There's always a Frederick P. Squidmeyer of the fucking, contest of champions on the fucking octagon, right? So he's the fucking nicest guy too, right? I don't know, man. I'm just trying to pay for grandma's cancer surgery. Fuck. 2-time Olympic champion. Hope it gets me through. Jesus, take the wheel. They call that guy the Scorpion. Hope I got what it takes. Listen, man, if I don't make it out, avenge me. You're going to have to avenge that guy because he's about to die to the Scorpion, right? He's going to die. But the Scorpion's going to die 2 rounds later. And the Scorpion's the fucking Scorpion, right? It's fucking head. They fucking made his fucking headdress out of a fucking volcano. You know what I mean? Or some shit. That got him to round 3. What do they do with your volcano headdress? You know what I mean? And to say nothing of the fucking endless champions that died to the Scorpion previously, right? You died, but you were killed by the best. Who killed you? The fucking Scorpion. The one that fucking called the Scorpion. The one who fucking walks the land that they call the fucking Scorpion. But the fucking Scorpion was put down in round 3 at 87. That fucking gave him death. You know what I mean? You fucking went down to a fucking 3rd stringer. At least I fucking went down to fucking Terry Crews, the fucking Balls of Fury guy. And I went down. He's fucking... That's the last time I fucking returned a car late. Last time. And not with attitude either. I'll be respectful. But he's found Jesus since then, so I think it'll be different. I made that whole story. I never met that guy. I am kidding. Role playing. Listen, folks, Euronymous. Gesundheit. So, character creation, you got a choice, man. So I think the thing is this, is that you also have to know this. Going in, you got these advanced skills in Troika, which is might be why they're giving you half the skill, but it's going to be your choice about whether or not. Listen, you're probably going to die within 3 seconds of playing a game like Deathtrap Dungeon anyway. So, and you're going to generate characters. You can generate characters for Troika in like literally. You generate a character for Troika if you're using the standard rules. In 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold on, wait. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 rolls of the die. So, like, literally in one more roll of the die than it would take you to generate the abilities for like the average D&D character, your average character in any other role-playing game system, you've already generated the entire character. So, like, you could like shoot out characters, like, and like if you know Fighting Fantasy games like Deathtrap Dungeon, you'll be having to anyway. So, anyway, my guy died in Deathtrap Dungeon like into like a trap. So the point is this, is that like the amazing moment was when my guy, who was this fucking like fucking Lancelot, fucking Phoenix Throne, bandolier, cosmic character, traveling through the land of Nod to get to this grand champion roll around. When he fucking died to a fucking, ass blaster trap, I was like, ain't that the fucking shit? You go across the fucking universe to go to a fucking Conan the Barbarian contest because you probably think you got this fucking shit because you're the fucking man, because you're fucking the fucking Golden Throne Phoenix guy with the great fucking sword. And you eat dick on like fucking page 3. I mean, you did this, you go back and forth a couple of times so you get back to page 3 to eat a dick, but you eat a dick all the same. No matter what page you eat the dick on, it tastes the same. I mean, look, if that's it, look, it depends on what you're into. It's flavor of the month, flavor of the day, the hour. Depends on your mood. You mean, why am I so flighty? Listen. So you're going to want to figure out how you're going to want to resolve the combat. The easiest thing to do is to resolve it the Fighting Fantasy way. If you want to keep it simple, just take your Troika guy. If he's got armor, if he or she or they have armor, have them have armor. And if they're fighting, look, Deathtrap Dungeon or any of the other fighting fantasy books, they're going to give you no favors anyway. So if you consider it kind of unfair that you have armor and other guys don't have armor, well, what then don't have armor, whatever. And if you consider it really unfair, you could always give the enemies armor as per the Troika rules, because you try to figure it out. That would involve you having to kind of read the reference document in kind of a more of a game master kind of perspective, because then you're trying to figure it out how you're kind of setting them up. So you're seeing that the solo game player has to figure out where they're playing. They're figuring out what rule set they're playing, what game they're playing. Then they're going to figure out like what the board is, right? And so the when we play Microtropic RPG and when we were playing Morkborg in Microtropic RPG, the point of doing that was that Morkborg was providing the rules, and Microtropic RPG was providing the location, the framework, the dungeon, right? And in this instance, Troika is providing the character, right? And Deathtrap Dungeon essentially is providing the play space. It's providing the area. Now, if we take out all of the Troika and we just basically have the fact that you've generated a person, with Troika rules, but you're just then playing, fighting fantasy. Well, where's the Troika? Well, where's your character out anywhere, ever, in a solo role-playing experience? Where's your investment? Where are you in the game? Where are you in the role play? Obviously, a solo game book, just like it's like the standard trope of the JRPG, Japanese role-playing game in a video game, having your main character have amnesia. That trope provides the blank slate so that you can easily just see yourself there. And in much the same way, the solo game book, really, this is like the whole thing, a fighting fantasy game book in which you are the hero. The kind of the premise of Deathtrap Dungeon, the role playing is you in the space. There's not with a lack of other characters to interact with, the lack of other kind of narrative interaction. There's not a lot of other kind of role, which is why a lot of people would say things about things like whether it's 4 Against Darkness or whether it's Microtropic RPG, with talking about these dungeon crawl type things, and say, well, that's not solo role playing, or that's not role playing, that's just a dungeon crawl. Well, that might have to do with the person or what they do or what they bring to it. I know that I had a role playing or a solo role playing experience, because when my guy, I was aware that what I was doing. I was aware that I was playing this, that I was seeing, that I was perceiving, that I was imagining, and it also has to do with how I role play. Like I tend to imagine things in the third person. When I name my characters, I never name my character my name. I never have any problem playing female characters. directing the actions of female protagonists or female player characters at all. I've never felt compromised or any sort of my dick's inverting, or that there's something happening here that's compromising my status or something. You know what I mean? Like anything like that at all. Um, Interesting. So, where was I? Deathtrap Dungeon. No, how was I? I am so sorry. I heard the most distracting sound in the world, and I completely lost my train of thought. I sincerely, sincerely apologize. And I fear that after this video is made, I'm going to recall and remember a thousand things that, well, couldn't possibly be a thousand things that I was supposed to recall. Look, Troika is rules light, but there are rules. Compared to the rules light nature of Morkborg, it's GURPS, but it's still rules light. You can absolutely play through the fighting fantasy games. I'm repeating myself. There's gonna have to be some adjustments that you can choose to make. You don't have to. The simplest choice to make would be to not resolve the damage with the damage tables, but to just resolve them via fighting fantasy rules, with just taking the 2 hits via stamina, having all hits resolved via just automatic 2 hits of damage. You do that, and then you don't really have a whole heck of a lot to worry about, though you may have taken a lot of the Troika out. Other things, like if you were to incorporate spell casting and stuff, look, it's a solo game book, so it's not going to be able to adjust or change its parameters. Having said that, I was looking at some of these characters and some of these backgrounds, like the Necromancer has the ability to raise the dead. So I saw that if that character had interacted and defeated that rock rub and then successfully cast that spell, look, it's you keeping track of your role playing, it's you keeping track of your data. Then why not have that rock rub? The rules of the spell tell you how long the rock rub is supposed. Then you're gonna look. The Deathtrap dungeon doesn't have a rule set for keeping track of 24 hours of time, so you're gonna have to keep it straight as far as when you're gonna say, or maybe it does. I think actually, I might be mistaken. There might be indications of when time goes by. I just might not have encountered them because my guy hasn't lived that long. Because I know that there's indications for when you're supposed to, or when you're allowed to have a meal. So that might also indicate when you're allowed to rest. You'd also go through and want to indicate when. Let's do this. They want to see this. Here we go. Rush up actions. This under the round. Cast a spell. Delay move. Shoot someone. Enemies. Hit someone. Yes. Okay. So like. Okay. So like. It's got Troika has interesting rules for retrieving items from your bag. You can use them or not use them depending on how you felt about it. I don't think it's going to come up if you were playing in the fighting fantasy games. Honestly, you would have to decide how you would use shields and whatever. Like I said, the main thing you're going to have to deal with is the more things from Troika that you incorporate. I think they're just going to inure to your character's advantage. So if you incorporate shields, obviously, because no one in Fighting Fantasy is going to have a shield, that's only a rule set that's going to favor you. So it's only you going to be gaining shields. So it's going to be that. It is what it is. But look, you're gonna have something to at least work with, and it is what it is. Okay, here's damage in Troika. When you win a roll versus an opponent in combat, you inflict damage. After successfully hitting someone, roll d6 and consult the damage charts on the inside front cover of this book. Reference your damage roll across the top row and the weapon down the side. The result is the damage inflicted and is deducted from your opponent's stamina. You're going to have to decide whether you're going to use that system or whether you're going to use the -2 system, like I said repeatedly during this review or this comment on, and I know I'm being overly repetitive at this point. So, and like I said, I'm being overly repetitive. So yeah, look, it's basically kind of the same system. So yeah, you obviously can play them, and I tried it, and it worked. My guy died, but not because of anything to do with an enemy. So I'm going to try more guys. I'm going to try to do more Troika in Fighting Fantasy. And I think I'm going to try to do figure out if I encounter more issues. The main issue seems to be figuring out or getting comfortable with assigning monster classes from Troika to the Deathtrap dungeon Fighting Fantasy enemies, because I think that having these more significant damage rolls makes it a little bit more interesting. I also pointed out in my previous video on this subject that there are 2 other rule sets, the Advanced Fighting Fantasy system itself, which has been, there's multiple instances of it, including the original instances of it made by the original guys behind Fighting Fantasy, Ian Livingstone and Doc Severinsen. No, Ian Livingstone and the other guy that's got the same name as the other guy from, fuck me, Steve Jackson. I'm sorry, Mr. Jackson. Never meant to make it darker. Listen, folks. Hey. Passes for jokes. Listen. Then in 2008, I think 2011, there was a reissue of Advanced Fighting Fantasy. And there's this quick start version of those rules that are available on DriveThruRPG for free. And then also on DriveThruRPG, there's someone else who did a hack of the advanced of the Fighting Fantasy rules. That's a cool system as well. They have their own alternative take on how to resolve damage as well. That's an interesting system that I think you could incorporate into this approach to Troika as well. Look, I like what people like about Troika is, I think what people like about Troika thing is like Troika. Basically, Troika was like, came out and was like, we don't really have a world. The world is here for you to write the world. And then people complained about the fact that there was no pre-existing world. So write it. In the meantime, you can play these characters in Fighting Fantasy. Was this video a success? Was this video any good? Did you like this video? Did I do good by you? Did I do bad by you? Hopefully I'll come back. I'll do more. I'll play more of this. I'll play more Troika characters in Fighting Fantasy. If I encounter more issues, more instances, more things that need to be resolved, or I troubleshoot more problems, I'll let you know. From the outset, you're going to have a judgment call on character creation about whether or not you want to resolve or generate skills at half the value as per Troika or at double the value as per Fighting Fantasy. If you're going to be playing your Troika characters in Fighting Fantasy, how many provisions are you going to take? Deathtrap Dungeon has you out the door with 10 provisions. Troika has you set it up out the door with 6. What do you want to do? What's your fancy? Whatever you do, be consistent. Don't try to cheat. Try to be consistent. but don't punish yourself. You don't need, not being hard on yourself is not cheating. Cheating is cheating. Okay? You don't have to be hard on yourself to not be cheating. You can just be fair. We're trying to have fun here. The purpose of these game books, the purpose of these role-playing games, the purpose of these activities is to have fun, to experience art and culture and creativity, right? And to experience joy and, diversion, right? Not to be confounded and upset and all this jazz. So bear that in mind when bearing these things in mind. I enjoyed sharing the space with this little turtle with the castle on the back. I like it. There you go. So all over the map in my usual style, though I covered the things I needed to cover. If I realize all the time, I always say to myself, I go, man, I don't know how they do it. I'll look at these videos and I go, wow, these videos by these content creators I like. These videos are like 7.5 minutes, 8 minutes long. I go, how do they do it? And then I'll realize, I go, Ben, if you just, would just stick to the topic and would just say what you need to say, things like Troika this, micro RPG that, this, that, and the other thing, and then just wouldn't go off on endless tangents like Mork and those fuckers, and when they uselessly dedicated this and grandstanding jerks, then maybe your videos wouldn't be an hour and 26 minutes long and people would actually watch them. Folks, speaking of actually trying to fool people into watching my content, we practice Grateful Dead rules here, meaning you can clip any of these videos. You can take any portion of them you like and reincorporate them, reuse them, share them with your friends, family, countrymen. 11. Breakthrough. I love the number 11. And it's funny, in tarot cards, the cards at 8 and the cards stationed at 11 will often end up switching places depending on the decks. And what's funny, strange, funny, haha, 8 and 11 are my favorite numbers. Amongst my favorite numbers. So here we have breakthrough. And we have the Osho Zen Tarot deck here. And it's a gift here. And it's a gift here. And because it's a gift here, because the temptation is always to translate and transliterate and to take this card and to say, was this strength? Or is this justice? Just let it be breakthrough. It doesn't matter what other cards intend Station 11 to mean. Here we have a clear message of breakthrough. And the message that reaches out to me is about pattern breaking. And also just the notion of just knowing that, sometimes it's important to do the thing, the action. So for us, I had to break out of a kind of an inertia loop. I wanted to make this video. This was a video that I wanted to make, but there was a resistance to it in the sense that because I had known that the Morkborg playthrough was pre-existing. There was a pressure to say, oh no, we have to finish that before we move on to anything else. We can't, go on this other tangent. We can't go on this other thing. And it's to say, no, we don't fight what is. We go through to what is. We go with the moment. We go with the realization of the video that is to be made is the actual video that is to be made. And maybe it's also with a side order of know thyself. Because we break some patterns, but in our breaking of patterns, there might be some patterns that we repeat and reiterate. Genocide, I hate to throw your failed predictions up in the... Hey, listen, it is what it is. You predict it. You make predictions. We make predictions. You make predictions. Nothing gambled, nothing gained. Also, the breakthroughs happen. The reconnections are made. But just make no mistake. There's no mistake that all these things are coming back. And it's all the 80s. It's all adult children playing fighting fantasy books from the 80s. Doll it up however you want to. Remember it however you want to. It's no judgment. It's just a simple statement of affairs. No harm, no foul. Just a simple iteration of facts. These rules are easy to understand. And when I was, I wonder if, and to realize that, am I the first asshole that said these rules came from fighting fantasy? Informal poll. Has anyone else tried to play Troika characters in fighting fantasy? Am I the first jerk that thought to do this? I can't be the first jerk that thought to do this. What have your experiences been playing Troika characters in fighting fantasy? Other people must have done this. I can't be the first jerk to do this. You tried. It's easy to do. God is my witness. I will be the first man to attempt the impossible. I will be the first man to eat 50,000 pennies in under an hour. Jesus. Okay, fine. Whatever you want to do, man. You know what I mean? Okay, folks, we did this. We played this. We play more. We'll play more in the future. Listen. We're gonna come back to Morkborg. The Morkborg game continues. Troika continues. You can play Troika for free. The SRD is out there. It looks great. It looks great in HTML. It looks great printed out on. Look. You get the tables out there. You get yourself a copy of Fighting Fantasy from your local Goodwill. Honestly. I had no idea these books existed, but they're everywhere. And because they have the die rules here, like literally like this is like you go like this. Look now, look solo role playing on the go because I don't even need to die because it's got the dice on the bottom of the page. And there you go. I could even look. Hey, here we go. Roll. I could generate a character. Here, watch this. I could generate a character. Oh, that'd be so lame. Oh man, that's gonna take an hour. Here, roll. We could roll ID3 plus 3 to determine skill. So that's a 5. So that's 2 points. That's 3. So the skill is 6. I want a pencil. Roll 2d6 plus 12 to determine stamina. Now, I'm doing this all with the book. 2d6 plus 12 to determine stamina. 2d6 plus 12 to determine stamina. Oh, there you go. That's a 1 and a 4. We've got 5. Oh, it's 17. Don't make fun of me. I freeze up because I get nervous. And then it's 1d6 plus 6 to determine luck. So it's 1d6 plus 6 to determine luck. Blah, 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 blah. So I'll do the first one. It's 1d6. It's a 5. But that's 11. Yeah, it's 11. So my luck is 11. So there you go. And then roll D66 on the background table and record possessions and skills. And then we had then 2d6 silver pence, a knife, a lantern, and flask of oil, rucksacks, and 6 provisions. That's what every character starts with. So what's our 2d6 silver pence? We've got 10. So we've got 10 silver pence plus normal possessions, 10 silver P plus possessions. And now we're going to roll the D66. Hey, we say hello to Spooky. What up, Spooky? You might be number 3 in the live chat. Oh, no. Actually, Truth Seekers was. Truth Seekers get a bronze. Truth Seekers got the bronze. We forgot to give him the bronze. Here we go. D66 for our background. We got 13. 13. What do we got for 13? 13. A burglar. As a second story man or woman, you often have cause to wander. Enemies come naturally from both sides of the law, and it pays to keep ahead of trouble. Possessions: crossbow and 18 bolts, roll of lockpicks, grappling hook. Advanced skills: 2 sneak, 2 locks, 1 awareness, 1 climb, 1 trapping, 1 knife fighting. That'll come in handy. 1 crossbow fighting. Okay. Special: you may test your luck to find and get in with the local criminal underbelly if one exists. None of that is going to do anything for us in fighting. The crossbow and the 18 bolts. See, I'd be worried about running out of bolts. I wouldn't worry about counting the bolts in Deathtrap Dungeon. I would automatically give the guy unlimited ammo. And/or let him fight with the grappling hook as a knife. Because if you let him fight with the grappling hook as a knife, then he's fine. Or give him the crossbow as a with unlimited bolts, because or else he's going to run out of bolts. That'd be the problem. Or let him run out of the bolts and then give him the knife, the grappling hook with the knife. But then again, folks, hey, there's nothing. The other thing that gets kooky, right? How about this? You're playing Deathtrap Dungeon, the book. Roll what you find on a corpse table from Ferratory. You've got 12 inventory slots. The crossbow and 18 bolts. The 18 bolts is that would be like 1 item space. The crossbow's 2. Roll of lockpicks, that's 1 item space. Grappling hooks, 1 item space. You got space. You can do some right? How much fun you want to have? There you go. So we generated a whole character with just the book. No dice. And just the standard rule documents, standard reference documents. Kiss my ass, Punky Brewster. Kiss it well. Get in there. God, I'm a weird guy. Weird guy. Weird guy. Okay, folks, did you have fun? Listen, I love you. I love you. I love you. I love you. If nobody told you they loved you today, somebody just did. That guy is me. So there's that. And I don't know what to tell you about that. The next thing I want to do is I'm going to Troika in Micro Chatbook RPG. You got to, absolutely, we got to, because then we'll be able to get the Troika enemies into the Micro Chatbook tables there. Duh. And then we won't encounter the same problem with the having to worry about how do you fight them with the stamina. And then the only problem is you still all the guys in the running around in the dungeons, and everyone going, when are we getting out of this dungeon? Never. And we say hello to Renee. Just walk away, Renee. We're playing Troika in Fighting Fantasy today. So you can take your massage parlors and your good time boys and your glitterati and your RPG command lines and your online macros, and you can shove them up your ass. Okay? Listen, I love you. Okay? Until next time. I'll talk to you next time.